Hello everybody, welcome back to Knowledge Planet, powered by Physics Wallah. I am Jyoti, your biology mentor, and today we are going to summarize a very important chapter, that is the fundamental unit of life. So guys, I hope all of you are doing good and all of you are excited to summarize the whole chapter. So let's get started. First of all guys, we all know that there are a lot of organisms present around us, lot of plants, lot of animals, so a lot of living organisms are present around us. But what exactly is that one thing which is common in all these animals, in all these plants? That they are made up of cell, right? So basically talking about the structural organization of organisms, you can understand that all the organisms, they are made up of certain organ system. Take an example of yourself as humans. So we have different organ system present in our body. Can you recall some of the organ system which are present in our body? We have excretory system, yes, we have reproductive system, respiratory system, digestive system, and so on. These organ systems are in turn made up of organs. Taking an example of respiratory system, you can actually see that our respiratory system contain a lot of organs such as lungs, diaphragm, nose, right? And these organs in turn are made up of tissues. Tissues are nothing but they are like the team of football player. They are working together, and actually here the tissue is a team of cells, and these cells are working together to make a common goal, that is they are able to perform a common function. So here organisms are made up of organ system. Organ systems are made up of organs. These organs are made up of tissue, that is the group of cells. And here guys, all the organisms have this one thing in common, that their whole structure is made up of cell. Talking about the cell, what exactly do we mean by cell? Cell is actually the structural and the functional unit of life. Now all of you would be thinking, ma'am, we are learning about this since lower grades, since 6th or 7th grades. But what exactly do we mean by this structural and functional unit? Let me tell you. Guys, cell is that single thing which is making our whole structure. For example, the structure of the wall, if you talk about. So the structure of the wall is made up of bricks, right? So brick is that single thing which is making the whole structure of the wall. And same is the case with us living organisms. Living organisms are made by a single unit which is called as cell. So cell is that basic unit which is making our whole structure, okay? So whatever structure that we have, we are made up of cells. Cells combine to make the tissue and the organs and the organ system. That's how we are built, right? Also guys, not just the structural unit but also the functional unit. What do we mean by functional unit now? Let me tell you. So guys, you all know that we are performing a lot of functions, right? Can you tell me a few of the functions that us humans are performing? Absolutely correct. So we are performing respiration, excretion, digestion, but how these functions are possible? These functions are possible only because of the cells. Cells are performing some activities, and due to the activities of cells, we are able to perform the functions, and that's why we say cell is that basic thing which is helping us in making the whole structure, and it is that single thing which is making us to perform many of the functions. Now let's talk about the discovery of the cell. So it was the Robert Hooke guys who discovered the cell for the first time. But mind you, you have to remember that Robert Hooke discovered a non-living cell because he discovered the cell when he was observing a thin slice of a cork under the microscope. So cell was discovered by Robert Hooke in 1665 for the first time, but the cell that he discovered was a non-living cell, okay? So he discovered a non-living cell. Yes. Then who was it who discovered the living cell for the first time? Antony von Leeuwenhoek. So Antony von Leeuwenhoek discovered the first living cell for the first time. He was so amazed by the discovery of Robert Hooke that he made his own complex microscope. He made his own advanced microscope, and with the help of his advanced microscope, he started observing different things. And the first thing that he observed was a droplet of pond water, and he saw that some cells are actually moving. That's when we were able to discover the first living cell, and that was in 1674, 9 years later after the discovery of Robert Hooke. Okay guys, now let's talk about the structure of the cell. So if you talk about the structure of the cell, cell has three important structures. What are those? Let's observe the cell right here. So if you observe the cell right here, you can actually see that there are three important parts present inside the cell. First of all, we have this boundary, right? And this boundary is nothing. It is actually what we call as plasma membrane. You can also call it as cell membrane. And also there is one more term which is not so famous, but yes, it can also be called as plasma lemma. So basically, most of these cells have these three important parts present in it, and these three important parts include one boundary which surrounds the cell, and this boundary is what we call as plasma membrane. You can also call it as cell membrane, and you can also call it as plasma lemma. Now guys, inside the cell you can actually see there will be a round structure present. This round structure is really important, just like the brain of your body, because it is actually the control unit for the cell. It controls the activities which are happening inside the cell, and this particular part is what we call as nucleus. Yes, we will talk more about each of these parts in detail, but first of all, just understand what are the three important parts. Now guys, between the cell membrane and the nucleus, there is a jelly-like material which is present, and this jelly-like material is what we call as cytoplasm. So basically, cell has the covering or the boundary which is called as cell membrane, and then it has a control unit, a round structure present inside it which is called as nucleus, and then it has a certain volume which is nothing but jelly-like substance, and this jelly-like substance is what we call as cytoplasm. Alright guys, now we have talked about the gross structure or the main structure of the cell. Let's talk about each of them in detail. Let's start with the cell membrane. So cell membrane is the outermost boundary, right? It is actually the outermost covering, and it is having the fine pores. Why there is a need of fine pores? Because cell need to obtain certain material, and cell need to excrete certain materials, and these materials moves with the help of these pores. So basically, cell membrane is nothing but it is actually the outermost covering having fine pores, having fine holes through which material can move inside or the out of the cell. Now guys, the cell membrane is not rigid, it is not hard, it is actually flexible. So it is flexible, and it is made up of organic substance such as the lipids and the protein. So please remember this part guys. Cell membrane is made up of organic material such as proteins and lipids. Also talking about cell membrane, you can understand it is semi-permeable, or you can also call it as selectively permeable. Now what do we mean by selectively permeable? Selectively permeable means it selects a material which has to come inside the cell or which has to go inside the cell. It doesn't let any material to enter or to go out of the cell. So cell membrane is like a gatekeeper. It checks what material is coming inside the cell and what material is going out of the cell. Also guys, if you talk about the plant cell is quite special because they have one more additional covering. So plants, we all know they can't move, they are rigid, or you can say they are fixed at one place, right? So basically plant cells are having an additional covering which is called a cell wall, and this additional covering helps the plant cell or the plants in providing extra protection. So basically cell wall, it is actually the additional covering in case of plant cells. So it is only present in the plant cell or the fungi or the bacteria and not in your animal cells, okay? Now this cell wall is surrounding the cell membrane, so it is the outermost covering in case of plant cell or the fungi or the bacteria. Cell wall is made up of organic material which is called as cellulose. Also guys, this cell wall is providing rigidity to the plant cell. This cell wall is actually providing structure to the plant cell, and it is protecting the cell of the plant under extreme climatic condition. Guys, this cell wall is freely permeable, meaning it is free for all substances to move inside or to move outside of it. So basically, it permits the cell of the plants and the fungi and the bacteria to to withstand a very dilute atmosphere. What do we mean by dilute atmosphere? An atmosphere which contains a lot of water. So this cell wall will prevent the bursting of the cell in case the cell is present in the dilute medium. Okay. Alright guys. Okay guys, now let's understand how exactly the movement of molecule is happening inside the cell with the help of this picture. So if you see this picture, you can actually understand the osmosis can be of three types depending upon in which kind of medium the cell is kept in. So if the cell is kept in hypertonic solution, so here hypertonic solution is a type of solution where we have a lot of solute, okay, and we have very less amount of water. So amount or quantity of water will be less. Talking about the isotonic solution, here the solution will have same amount of solute, same amount of water. So here the amount of solute will be same. So same solute will be there and same amount of water will be there. Talking about the hypotonic solution, it is a kind of solution where we have a lot of water. So water will be more and the solute, the quantity of solute will be less. Now let's talk about what will happen when the cells are kept in this solution. So if the cell is kept in hypertonic solution, here the amount of water is really less in the surrounding, and that's why the water molecule from the cell will start to move, that is to the outside, and here the cell will lose a lot of water and cell will shrink. If you talk about the isotonic solution, so here the solution is having same amount of solute, same amount of water, and the net movement of water will be zero and cell will remain same. Talking about the hypertonic solution, here the cell is kept in a solution where the amount of water is more in the surrounding, so water molecule will start to move from the surrounding to the cell, or you can say to inside of the cell. So here the water molecule will start to move inside the cell will absorb a lot of water and the cell will get enlarged, it will get engorged, and sometimes the cell can burst if it is not having the cell wall. So if you talk about the hypertonic, cell will shrink due to the loss of water. In case of isotonic, net movement of water will be zero and the cell will remain same. Talking about hypertonic, cell will actually absorb a lot of water, cell will enlarge in size, and yes, here sometimes cell can even burst. Talking about the diffusion process guys, we have understood diffusion is all about the gases or the dissolved solute in the solution. So here if you place some droplet of ink into the water, these droplets of ink will start to distribute, will start to move from a region of their higher concentration to a region of their lower concentration, and that's how all the molecule will be distributed uniformly in the water because these two medium are in direct contact with each other, right? Okay, now let's talk about the nucleus guys. So nucleus we all know is a kind of control unit for the cell, right? So here if you have a look on the structure of the nucleus, first of all you will see that nucleus is surrounded by a lot of endoplasmic reticulum. So these are endoplasmic reticulum which is surrounding the nucleus. What are endoplasmic reticulum? We are going to talk about that, but before that let's have a look on the structure of the nucleus. So here nucleus is surrounded by endoplasmic reticulum. Not just this guys, but this nucleus is also having one membrane which is called as nuclear membrane. Here if you see, so nucleus is surrounded by a double membrane and this is what we call as nuclear membrane, okay? So yes, here you can actually see nucleus is surrounded by a membrane, double membrane, and this membrane is what we call as nuclear membrane or nuclear envelope. So we have a nuclear envelope or nuclear membrane surrounding the nucleus. This nuclear membrane or nuclear envelope is having fine pores. These pores are what we call as nuclear pores, and with the help of these pores, material can move inside the cell and out of the cell. Not just this, nucleus have a medium inside it, and this medium is what we call as nucleoplasm. So just like the cell is having the cytoplasm, nucleus is also having a medium inside it, and this medium is what we call as nucleoplasm. This medium contains a lot of thread-like structure which is called as chromatin. Now what exactly do we mean by chromatin? This chromatin is nothing but the DNA in the coiled form, and that's why we say nucleus contains the genetic information or the genetic material, that is the DNA. Also guys, talking about the nucleolus, inside the nucleus you will see one round structure present, and this round structure is what we call as nucleolus. Nucleolus play an important role in the protein production or the protein synthesis. If you talk about the endoplasmic reticulum, they have a role to provide rigidity to the cell. Okay, so they are providing rigidity to the cell, they are supporting the cell, or you can say they are making the skeleton of the cell. Alright guys, now let's understand why this nucleus is so much important, what exactly it is doing for us. So if you talk about the nucleus, it is really important because it plays a central role in cell division. So all these cells are dividing, are multiplying so that different body parts can be repaired, different body parts can be formed, we can increase in size, we can increase in height, right? So basically cells are dividing, and the thing which is controlling the cells to divide, it is actually the nucleus. So nucleus plays an important role in cellular reproduction, or you can say in cell division. Okay, not just this guys, but nucleus is also playing an important role in case of lot of activities, or you can say in case of the differentiation process. So whenever the cell is dividing, when the cell gets mature, the cell has to take up a particular role to be performed throughout its life, and it is actually the nucleus which decide that what role a cell has to take. So basically nucleus also plays an important role in the development of the cell. How exactly a cell has to develop, what role a cell has to take, it is all controlled by the nucleus. So nucleus is playing two important functions. One is cell division, or you can say cell reproduction, and the second is the differentiation process. That is, when the cell gets mature, it has to take a particular role, and this role will be decided by the nucleus of that particular cell. Also guys, in some of the organisms, the nucleus is not much organized. So basically in some organisms, the nuclear region may be poorly defined, they have nuclear material lying in the cytoplasm. Here let me make you understand with the help of an example. So if you talk about the bacteria, okay, let's assume this is actually a shape of bacteria. So here its nuclear material will be there in the cytoplasm. So this nuclear material is not inside a nucleus or the nuclear membrane. This genetic material is just lying in the cytoplasm. So here this is what we call as genetic material. Okay, so here is the genetic material of this bacterial cell. Here we have the cytoplasm, and then we have the boundary, that is the cell membrane and the cell wall. So basically here you can actually see the nuclear region is poorly defined. It is there just lying in the cytoplasm, and this kind of region where the nuclear material is present is what we call as nucleoid. So this is what we call as nucleoid region. So here this is nothing but the nucleoid region. Okay, so basically some organisms, they will have poorly defined nuclear region. They don't have a nuclear membrane inside which the nuclear material is present. Their nuclear material is just lying in the cytoplasm, and this kind of region is what we call as nucleoid. And on the basis of nucleus guys, organisms can be of two types. One is prokaryotic and the other one is eukaryotic. So here if you have a look on this diagram, so you can actually see in this table we have prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and let's compare each of them one by one. So prokaryotic organisms, you can understand pro itself means primitive. Okay, so pro means primitive, that is very basic kind of nucleus. And if you talk about the eukaryotic organism, eu itself means true or proper. Okay, don't get confused, because many a time we get confused with the pro word, right? Pro doesn't always means professional or advanced. So here in biology we say pro means primitive or basic. Prokaryotic organisms, they have a very basic nucleus. Karyon itself means nucleus. So prokaryotic organisms, they have a very basic nucleus, and this cell can have a size which will be really small, that is 1 to 10 micrometer. If you compare a particular eukaryotic cell with the prokaryotic cell, you can understand that the eukaryotic cell can be larger as compared to the prokaryotic cell, and they can have a size of 5 to 100 micrometer. If you talk about prokaryotic cell, guys, their nuclear region is poorly defined. They don't have a nucleus and their nuclear region is without a nuclear membrane. Okay, so they have poorly defined nucleus and they lack nuclear membrane. On the other hand, if you talk about the eukaryotic organisms, they have a proper nucleus, an advanced nucleus, and they have a well-defined nucleus. So they have a nuclear region which is surrounded by a nuclear membrane. Also, guys, if you talk about the chromosome, so in the prokaryotic cell, they can have no chromosome or one chromosome. But if you talk about the eukaryotic cell can have more than one chromosome. Okay. Also, guys, if you talk about the other parts of the cell, other membrane or you can say other organelle of the cell, these particular parts of the cell will be without a membrane in case of prokaryotic cell. But if you talk about the eukaryotic cell, in case of eukaryotic cell, other organelle will also have a membrane. So, membrane bound organelles is not there in case of prokaryotic cell. But in case of eukaryotic cell, they have cell organelle which is having the membrane surrounding it. Okay, so eukaryotic cell, they will have membrane bounded organelle. For example, the endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, all these organelle, they will have a membrane surrounding it. Okay, guys. Now let's talk about the cytoplasm. So cytoplasm is a region where the other organelle are lying, right? So cytoplasm is the part of the cell which is inside the cell membrane and outside of the nucleus. Okay. Also, it is semi-liquid, or you can say it is a kind of having a jelly texture. Okay. So it is semi-liquid in nature and it contains several other organelles, several other part of the cell. Okay. And these parts of the cell have their own specific function. Also, guys, if we talk about the living part of the cell, so cytoplasm along with other living part of the cell is what we call as protoplasm. Yes. So guys, we have talked about all the three important parts of the cell, and now is the time that we talk about other important part of the cells, or you can say the other organelles which are present inside the cell. So let's start with the endoplasmic reticulum first. Endoplasmic reticulum is a kind of large network of membrane bound tubes or the sacs which are present. So here it is a large network of membrane bound tubes and also the sheets. Endoplasmic reticulum can be of two types, guys, depending upon their texture. So if the texture is rough, it can be called as rough endoplasmic reticulum, and if the texture is smooth, it can be called as smooth endoplasmic reticulum. What's the difference between the two? Rough endoplasmic reticulum is having the rough texture due to the attached ribosomes. And guys, mind you, you need to remember this thing that ribosomes are really important. Why exactly? Because these ribosomes, they are playing an important function in the protein synthesis. Okay, so they are helping the cell in making the protein, in synthesizing the protein. Okay, also guys, if you look at this picture, you can actually see that rough endoplasmic reticulum, they have some texture, they have some dotted texture over it, and these dotted structures are nothing but these are actually the ribosomes. So these are nothing but the ribosomes which are attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Whereas if you talk about the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, here we have smooth endoplasmic reticulum and here we have RER, that is rough endoplasmic reticulum. So talking about the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, they don't have any attached ribosomes. Now let's talk about the function of endoplasmic reticulum. Guys, endoplasmic reticulum is really important because it is making a network through which materials can be transported. So it is making the network or channels for the transportation of material. Also guys, it is making the framework of the cell. Just like we have skeleton which is supporting us, which is making our whole structure and which is providing us rigidity so that we can stand, we can walk, right? So you can understand in case of cell as well, to provide it a particular rigidity, we have endoplasmic reticulum. So endoplasmic reticulum is like the skeleton of the cell. It is making the network, or you can say it is making the framework of the cell. Okay. Also guys, if you talk about the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum is really important because it is manufacturing some product which is important for the formation of cell membrane, the boundary of the cell, right? So basically, smooth endoplasmic reticulum manufacture fats, lipids and other essential materials which are important for the generation of cell membrane. And this process by which the cell membrane is formed, we call it as biogenesis. Okay, so this process by which cell membrane is formed, it is called as biogenesis. Bio means something living phenomena is happening and genesis means formation. So here a cell membrane, a living membrane is getting formed. Also guys, if we talk about the rough endoplasmic reticulum, rough endoplasmic reticulum is involved in the protein synthesis. Also endoplasmic reticulum which are present in your liver cells, they are responsible for removing the toxic substance from your body. So basically endoplasmic reticulum of liver cells, they are detoxifying the toxins which are present in your body. So they are playing an important role in detoxifying the poisons and the drugs like the medicines that you are taking in case of certain infection. Okay guys, now let's talk about another important cell organelle which is the Golgi apparatus. So Golgi apparatus has a really important function which is related or which is in association with the endoplasmic reticulum. Here Golgi apparatus, it is actually storing the material produced by endoplasmic reticulum. It is manufacturing the product after modifying the product produced by the endoplasmic reticulum. So here you can understand Golgi apparatus, it is nothing but the stacks of membrane bound vesicles or the vesicles which are really flat. Here you can actually see some vesicles are there, some tubes are there which has been flattened, right? And it will have two phases. So we have cis phase which is obtaining the material, and then we have the trans phase which is releasing the material, dispatching the material to be taken by the other parts of the cell. Okay, so here Golgi apparatus is nothing but it is actually the stacks of membrane bound vesicles, and also they're arranged in parallel manner, in parallel fashion. Talking about the Golgi apparatus, they have really important function. They're responsible for storing the material, for modifying the material, also packaging the material so that it can be dispatched to different areas. So they're responsible for packaging the materials as well. And finally, after packaging the material, they're dispatching it for the other organelle so that the other part of the cell can utilize it. Also guys, if you talk about the Golgi apparatus, they're synthesizing some complex sugar from the basic sugar. So they're also making the complex sugar from the simple sugar present inside the cell. And also it is involved in the formation of lysosome. Lysosome is also one of the important organelle. Let's talk about it guys. Lysosome is a particular organelle which contain the digestive enzymes. Now what is the need of digestive enzymes inside the cell? Because there might be certain foreign agent which may enter inside the cell, and these lysosomes, they release their digestive enzyme, or they can engulf the foreign agent and digest it. Also when the cell is kind of not working nicely, or if the cell is faulty, if the cell is damaged, all the lysosomes of the cell will burst at once, digesting its own cell. So guys, lysosomes are nothing but they are the membrane sacs which are budded from the Golgi apparatus. So they had been produced by the Golgi apparatus, and they contain digestive enzymes. To digest what? To digest the foreign agent, and in some cases they can digest its own cell. Okay, yes. So here lysosomes have the function for intracellular digestion. That is, inside the cell whatever foreign agents are coming, these foreign agents are digested by the lysosomes. Intra itself means inside. Okay, so inside the cell many foreign agent will be there which has to be digested. Also guys, these lysosomes, they can destroy foreign substances which are entering inside the cell, and some of the lysosomes, they can digest its own cell, and that's why they're called as suicidal bags. So suicide bags of the cells is nothing but the lysosomes, and these lysosomes are doing nothing but they are bursting at once at one time so that the cell will be digested by the digestive enzymes. So digest damaged and the old cell. Not all the cells will be digested by the lysosomes, only the faulty cells, damaged cells, and the cells which has been infected by the microorganisms. Alright guys, now let's talk about the other organelle, which is mitochondria. Mitochondria is really important because all the activities that you are performing, such as walking, reading, thinking, all these activities require energy. And where this energy is coming from? This energy is coming from the mitochondria. So mitochondria is called as powerhouse of the cell because it is the site for oxidative phosphorylation. It is a site for aerobic respiration. Let's understand this part, guys. Mitochondria, talking about its structure, it has two membranes. One membrane is porous. So here if you see, let me highlight this part for you. So here if you see, mitochondria has two different membrane. Okay, so one is the outermost membrane, which is porous, and then there is one inner membrane which is deeply folded. So it is folded so that it can increase the surface area for the respiration to occur. Okay, so here mitochondria has two membranes. The outer membrane is porous, it has a lot of pores so that material can enter inside the mitochondria. And then it has the inner deeply folded membrane, and this inner deeply folded membrane is also called as cristae. These cristae are increasing the surface area, right? You can actually see. So if you talk about a flat structure and if you talk about the folded structure, you can actually see we have a lot of surface area in case of folded structure. So here we have this surface area, but here we have a lot of surface area due to this folding of the membrane. Okay, so here the inner membrane is actually folded to increase the surface area. Now let's talk about the function of mitochondria. One function we already know, it is responsible for synthesis of ATP, right? It is responsible for the synthesis of energy. So guys, they're responsible for the cellular respiration and release of energy in the form of ATP. Now what exactly is the ATP, guys? Many of the time we purchase different kinds of articles. Sometimes we purchase notebooks, sometimes we purchase pen, sometimes we have to purchase the food items. And how exactly we are purchasing? We are using the cash, we are using the money, right? So here in our body, if we have to perform certain functions, we need energy for that. And to obtain energy, we need to actually utilize this ATP. So ATP is nothing but it is actually the energy currency. Whenever you spend ATP, you obtain energy, and this energy can be utilized to perform various functions. So mitochondria is responsible for the cellular respiration, and also it releases the ATP. Okay, and this ATP is nothing but it is actually the currency for the energy. Also guys, it is called as the powerhouse of the cell because it is the only organelle responsible for producing the ATP molecule, which is utilized in the generation of energy. Also, they have their own DNA and ribosomes. Do you remember I told you that nucleus have the DNA of the cell, but along with the nucleus, mitochondria right here also has its own DNA and also the ribosomes. Okay, now let's talk about one more important organelle, guys, that is the plastids. So plastids, they have PLA in its name, and you can always remember that this plastids is only present in the plants. Okay. So these plastids are only present in the plants, and there are two types of plastids actually. So one is called as chromoplast and the other is called as leucoplast. Chromoplast itself means colorful. Here guys, chrome itself means color. Okay, so the plastids which contain color, these plastids are what we call as chromoplast. So they are colored plastid. If you talk about the leucoplast, they are white or colorless. Okay, so they are white or colorless, and we can also call them as leucoplast. Okay, now guys, let's talk about chromoplast. Chromoplast which have a specific pigment, specific color, that is the green pigment. These kinds of plastids are what we call as chloroplast. Okay, so chromoplast, they have color. So you might have seen various parts of the plant, flowers, fruits, roots, right, stem. All of these parts are colored. Fruits can be red, yellow, orange, right? And also roots are white in color. If you talk about the leaves, leaves are green in color. So all this color is there in different parts of the plant because of the chromoplasts which are present inside these parts. And a special type of chromoplasts that have green pigment, that is the chlorophyll pigment, these chromoplasts are called as chloroplasts. So please remember guys, you can understand chromoplasts which have chlorophyll pigment, they are called as chloroplasts. Okay, so chloroplasts are the special type of plastids, are the special type of chromoplast. Okay, so chromoplasts are the plastids with color, and special type of chromoplasts that have chlorophyll pigment or the green pigment, okay, they are called as chloroplast. Because they are plastid, that's why plast, and because they have chlorophyll pigment, that's why chloro. Okay, also guys, leucoplast, what exactly is the role of leucoplast? Leucoplast has a role to store the food material. Yes, so certain parts of the plants are eaten by us animals, right? So certain parts of the plant, such as sometimes leaves, sometimes fruits, sometimes vegetables, sometimes we also eat the roots, right? So a lot of parts are there in the plants which are eaten by the animals, because these parts contain starch or other food material, and these parts contain the leucoplast, which is storing the food material. So leucoplasts are responsible for storage of materials such as starch, oil and proteins. They have their own DNA and ribosomes. Talking about the plastids guys, just like the mitochondria, they also have their own DNA and the ribosomes. So there are three parts of the cell which have their own DNA and ribosomes. So the parts which have their own DNA and ribosomes, these parts are nucleus. Then we have the mitochondria, and then we have the plastids, which are only present in the plants. Okay, alright guys, now let's talk about one more important cell organelle, which is vacuoles. Vacuoles are really important in case of plants because they are storing the cell sap or the material for the plants. So vacuoles are the storage sacs. They are the sacs which store the material such as amino acid, sugars, organic acids, proteins, and also they can store the waste material. So they also help the various cell in case of excretion. They store the waste material, and at the time of excretion they can release this particular material from its body. Okay, also guys, they can have food pigments present inside it. So vacuoles are there for the storage. They are the sacs for the storage, and they are storing a lot of material, excretory material, waste material, some pigments, lipids, some food items such as the sugars, okay, some organic acids. So vacuoles are there for storage, and they provide turgidity to the plant cells. Wait, turgidity? What do we mean by it? Turgidity means tightness, or you can say it is providing rigidity to the plant cells. So in case you are not able to understand guys, think about the balloon. So if you talk about the water balloons, you might have seen, if you fill only a less amount of water, the balloon will be all flaccid, will be loose, right? So here we have a balloon which is all flaccid, but if you talk about a balloon which is having a lot of water, it will be all turgid, it will be all tight. So this kind of vacuoles which contain a lot of water, what they are doing, they are providing turgidity to the plant cells, and due to this turgidity you will see that leaves will also be okay. You might have seen guys, sometime when we don't water the plants, what happens? The leaves get distorted, right? The leaves are wilted down, and this condition is what we call as flaccid cells. Okay, so when the cells are flaccid, let me make this part clear to you. So cells, when they are flaccid, that is, the cells will be loose, the leaves will wilt. Okay, so in that case you will see wilted leaves. But if you talk about if the cell is turgid, so if the cell is turgid, or you can say the cell is tight, the leaves will be alright, the leaves will be upright. Okay, they will not be wilted. Alright guys, also guys, vacuole, if you talk about the vacuoles are much functional in case of plants, and if they are present in animal cell, they may be small in size and they may be more in number. So plant cells have a larger vacuoles and they have fewer vacuoles. But if you talk about the animal cells have vacuoles which are smaller ones, and they will have like more than one vacuoles. Okay, but in the plant cells they have one vacuoles or maybe two vacuoles, and they will be more in size as compared to the vacuoles present in the animal cell. Alright guys, now let's talk about the important phenomena which is happening inside the cell, that is the cell division. Cell division is important process which is happening inside the cell, and it leads to the growth of the cell, growth of the body parts. So you might have seen when we are small in height, we are actually less in weight, but how exactly we are growing in size? Because our cells are dividing, and that's how we are able to grow. Now, cell division can be of two types guys, depending upon what kind of cell is dividing. So if the role of growth, development, repair is taking place, in that case cell division will be mitosis. But if you talk about a role where the gametes has to be formed, sex cells have to be formed, in that case meiosis will take place. Okay, so let's understand this part. Basically cell division can be of two types depending upon what kind of cell is actually dividing. So if it is the somatic cell, okay, if it is the somatic cell, normal cells that you have like in the hands, legs, arms, okay, so these cells will undergo mitosis. And if you talk about the sex cells like the ovum or the sperms, okay, these sex cells will undergo meiosis. Now what exactly is the difference between these two kind of division? In case of mitosis, the genetic material will be exactly same. Okay, so here earlier we had two chromosomes, right? And after the mitosis as well, two cells will be produced, and each of these cells will have two chromosomes each. Okay, so in case of mitosis, two cells are produced. But if you talk about the meiosis, here we had the 4 chromosomes, but after the meiosis cell division, the number of chromosomes reduced by half. If we have 4 chromosomes, the cells which are getting formed, they will have only 2 chromosomes each. Okay, also in case of meiosis, we will have 4 daughter cells which will be formed. Okay, and where exactly the mitosis is taking place? Mitosis is taking place whenever growth has to take place, whenever the repair of the cell has to take place, right? Many of the time we get injury, but over the period of time the cells are dividing and the part heals on its own, right? How exactly? Because new cells are getting formed, and this is done by the mitosis. But when the sex cells has to be formed, like in the case of reproduction, in that case meiosis has to be formed, and here the number of chromosomes will remain same, but here the number of chromosomes will be divided by 2, will be reduced by half, so that after the fusion of gamete, that is the sperm and the ova, the number of chromosome, it will be normal, that is the 46 chromosome or the 23 pair of chromosomes. So the number of chromosome is reduced by half, so that after the fusion the number of chromosomes will be normal. Okay, I hope this part is clear to you guys. We revised a lot of things, so let's summarize everything that we have learned from this video. First of all, we talked about the cell. We learned about that cell is nothing but it is actually the structural and the functional unit of life, right? So it is structural and the functional unit of life. We also learned about, guys, that cell has 3 important parts. So basically cell can have 3 important parts. What are those? So basically a cell can have cell membrane, a cell can have nucleus, and also cell have the cytoplasm. Alright, other than these parts, we also learned about that cell can also have various organelles, right? So let's talk about the organelles which are there. If we talk about the organelles, cell organelles, we talked about a lot of organelles such as endoplasmic reticulum. Then we learned about that endoplasmic reticulum can be of 2 types, that is smooth endoplasmic reticulum and rough endoplasmic reticulum, which has the attached ribosomes. We also learned about, guys, the other organelles such as your Golgi apparatus. So yes, we learned about the Golgi apparatus as well. Along with Golgi apparatus, we also talked about the lysosomes, and then we also learned about the mitochondria, and the plastids, and finally we learned about the vacuoles. Alright, guys, finally we also talked about the cell division, which can be of 2 types depending upon the cell which is dividing. So if it is actually the somatic cell for the growth and repair of the body, it will be the mitosis which is taking place, and the number of chromosomes will remain same and 2 daughter cells will be produced. If you talk about the meiosis, meiosis will occur in case of sex cells or the formation of gametes such as sperm cells or the egg cells, and we learned about that in case of meiosis, number of chromosomes will be reduced by half, and also, guys, there will be 4 daughter cells which will be produced. Okay, so I guess we are done with the summarization part, and now we can actually see some of the questions. So here, guys, I have this first question. How do substances like carbon dioxide and water move in and out of the cell? So what do you think? How exactly this carbon dioxide, which is the gas, is moving and the water molecules are moving? Is it due to the diffusion, osmosis, diffusion and osmosis respectively, or none of the above? The correct answer is C option, guys, diffusion and osmosis. We have learned about gas molecules or the dissolved solute particles. They can move with the help of diffusion process. Whereas if you talk about the water molecules, the movement of water molecules take place with the help of osmosis, and also there will be the involvement of semi-permeable membrane. Absolutely. Okay, now let's have a look on this question. So if you talk about next question, which out of the following is not a function of vacuole? So what do you think, guys, out of this, which is not the function of the vacuole? Do you think it is not there for the storage? Do you think it is not there for providing turgidity and rigidity to the cell? Or do you think it is not there for the excretion of waste material or for the locomotion? Think about it, guys. What do you think? Absolutely correct. So if you're thinking D as the answer, you're absolutely correct. D is the correct answer. Why? Because locomotion is the movement of body, right? So vacuoles are not helping the cells or the plants or the animals to move from one place to another. It is actually the muscle cells that animals have which is helping it to move from one place to another, and not the vacuoles which are present in the cells. So vacuoles can help in the storage of materials such as pigments, food material, waste material, and vacuoles can also help in providing turgidity, that is the tightness to the cell, and also providing rigidity to the cells. And it can also help certain cells to store the waste material and to excrete it out at the time of excretion. Also, guys, locomotion is all about the movement of body, and vacuoles are not responsible for that, and that's why D is the correct answer. Locomotion is not the function of vacuole. Okay, let's have a look on this question now. So if you talk about this question, guys, organelle other than nucleus containing DNA is. So we learned about 3 parts of the cells which contain their own DNA and the ribosomes. So can you recall those parts? Do you think it is mitochondria, chloroplast, lysosomes, or none of the above? Guys, Correct answer is actually the mitochondria and the chloroplast. We have learned about that along with the nucleus, mitochondria and plastids can contain DNA, and your chloroplast is a kind of chromoplast, and chromoplast is a kind of plastids, right? Yes. So let me just write it for you again. It is mitochondria and the chloroplast, which is the correct answer. Chloroplast is a kind of chromoplast, and chromoplast is a kind of plastids. And that's why the correct answer is A and B option. Okay guys, now let's have a look on this question. So basically in this question, you have to name the organelles which is showing the analogy written as under. So first of all, we have the A option, transporting channels of the cell. So can you recall what exactly is that particular organelle which is making the transporting channel for the transportation of material? Yes, it is actually the endoplasmic reticulum. So endoplasmic reticulum, it is forming the channels for the transportation of material. Also, it is making the framework of the cell. Guys, let's see the next part. Powerhouse of the cell. So what is that particular organelle which is called as powerhouse of the cell, which produces the energy? Absolutely correct if you're thinking about mitochondria. So it is actually the mitochondria which is responsible for respiration, and it is producing the ATP, that is the energy currency, with the help of which we are able to have the energy and perform the various activities. Alright, let's see the next part. Packaging and dispatching unit of the cell. So do you remember guys, there is that particular organelle which store the material produced by endoplasmic reticulum. It modifies the material and also it dispatches the material after the packaging, and it is nothing but the Golgi apparatus. So yes, it is actually the Golgi apparatus which is responsible for packaging and dispatching the materials. Alright, now let's have a look on this part, digestive bag of the cell. So guys, we all know there are certain organelles which contain digestive enzymes, and these organelles are responsible for intracellular digestion, and this is nothing but your lysosomes, also called as suicide bag of the cell. Absolutely correct. Here. Now guys, if you talk about the storage sacs of the cell, so particular organelle which store the material such as pigment, such as excretory product, and this is nothing but the vacuole. So here the correct answer will be vacuole. So yes, vacuole are responsible for storage of various materials such as pigment, food material, and the excretory material. Alright, now let's have on this question. Kitchen of the cell. So guys, we all know that there is green pigment present inside the cell. This green pigment is called as chlorophyll. This chlorophyll is present in a special chromoplast called as chloroplast. We learned about that plastids can be of two types, right? So plastids can be of two types. So one, we have leucoplast, which is colorless or white, and then we have the chromoplast. And the chromoplast, which contain chlorophyll pigment, these chromoplasts are what we call as chloroplasts, right? And chloroplasts are really important because chloroplasts help the plant in performing the photosynthesis and in producing the food material. So here the kitchen of the cell is nothing but it is actually the chloroplast, okay? Don't get confused between plastids, chromoplast. You have to write chloroplast, guys, because plastids can be of two types, that is leucoplast and chromoplast. If you write plastid, it will be wrong because not all the plastids are making the food material. If you write chromoplast, it can be wrong because not all the chromoplasts are making the food material. But if you write the chloroplast, then it will be the perfect answer because yes, chloroplast is that particular plastid which contain chlorophyll pigment and help the plant in the process of photosynthesis and the production of food. Last but not the least, control room of the cell. We all know The cell has one round structure which is really important. It is controlling the cell division and it is also controlling the development of the cell. What role a cell has to take after the development, after getting mature, and it is nothing but the nucleus. So yes, control unit of the cell is nothing but the nucleus. Alright guys, now let's have a look on this last question, and it is, you have to select the 3 essential parts of the cell. So what are the 3 essential parts of the cell? Do you remember? Absolutely correct if you're thinking about the nucleus, cytoplasm and the cell membrane. Guys, we all know cell has 3 important parts, one boundary, one control unit which is called as nucleus, and the jelly-like material which is present between the nucleus and the cell membrane, that is the cytoplasm. Alright, so the correct answer is A, C and D option. Alright guys, so now let me take your leave because we have covered all the topics which are related to the chapter Fundamental Unit of Life. I hope this particular lecture will help you understanding the concepts which are related to the chapter the Fundamental Unit of Life. And now as we are done with all the part of the chapter, I'll have to take your leave. We will meet again in the next video. Till then, just take care and have a nice day.